For my latest video, I'm using the shortened version of my Martin Luther King video. I hope you like it.
Like poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929. As a young child, Martin Luther King Jr. was deeply involved in religion and civil rights activism, as his father was a leading member in religious and civil rights activities nearby. For a short time in his life, Martin Luther King Jr. also questioned the ideas of the Catholic Church, but eventually embraced his faith and became a minister at the local church, just like his father. As an intelligent young child, Martin Luther King skipped 2 grades in high school and joined Morehouse College while only 15. While studying after college, he learned of Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy for nonviolence, something we still honor him for using. Martin Luther King quickly began to establish himself as a leading activist in the civil rights movement and began to deliver many speeches across the United States. To kick off the civil rights movement, on December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks, who refused to give her seat up to a white man, was arrested. Martin Luther King instantly concocted a plan to make sure Rosa Parks' arrest was avenged. He established the Montgomery bus boycott, a boycott meaning letting people not ride on buses so that the bus economy would deplete. This worked tremendously, and almost exactly a year later, bus segregation was deemed unconstitutional, the first victory for the civil rights movement. With this, Martin Luther King's strategy for nonviolence was proved worthy. However, many haters of the civil rights movement began to turn against Martin Luther King and his actions. He was arrested more than 20 times during his time in activism, as well as other terrible things done to him. But still, he kept being an activist. But with Martin Luther King's actions combined with so many other activists' actions, all of the civil rights of this era was finally coming together for one event that would shape history: the March on Washington, D.C., known as the March on Washington. During the march, which Dr. King played a significant part in, Martin Luther King, delivered one of the most famous and influential speeches that American history has ever seen, "I Have a Dream," which you saw a fraction of at the beginning of this video. But with this speech and the march, ripples were sent across America, and many more people began to advocate for civil rights. But King did not stop acting. 2 years after the March on Washington, he led a march on Selma, Alabama, to advocate for voting rights. But the march was stopped by the police, who used brutal tactics on the marchers. However, the marchers did not start marching. They marched again, until finally, the march was guarded by the National Guard, letting them finish the march. But among all of these victories, 2 humongous ones had just taken place. In 1965, the President, Lyndon B. Johnson, signed the Voting Rights Act for the activists. A year earlier, he had signed the Civil Rights Act. These both were ginormous victories for the movement, and helped Martin Luther King Jr. finally get to see the fruits of his actions. But in 1968, everything was about to come to a sharp end. On April 4th that year, he went to Memphis, Tennessee, and delivered his last speech, a highly poetic one, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." But tragically, that day, when he was standing on his hotel balcony in Memphis, a gunman shot him 3 times in the chest. He was rushed to the hospital, and he died at 6:30 p.m. that day. He was an amazing man, and he led an amazing life. I hope we can honor him.
Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly.